This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We're going to start off with a little inspiration for you. A plane crash on June 1st, 1998 left Dr. Barry Hewlin Hyde without taste, smell, or sight. Soon after, he learned to use JAWS, or Job Access with Speech, at Raleigh School for the Blind. Now he's an aviation safety analyst for the FAA. He also became the first and only blind advanced ground and instrument instructor, and from the diary of his extraordinary life, he wrote, "Seeing New Horizons, a blind aviator's journey after tragedy." How are you able to do these things?
Well, it's repetition. Since my visual sense of learning has left the premises, I just have to learn through hearing now. So I repetitiously hear things to remember it, so that's how I'm able to do as well as I'm doing.
How did you end up working for the government?
Wow, that was a large adventure. Well, first off, I had to go back to school at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, to receive my history degree. And then afterward, I moved to Daytona Beach, Florida, and started attending Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which is the largest flight school in the world. And I became their first and only blind graduate student in their 82-year history of existence. So, gosh, that was 14 years ago, so now I'm still their only blind student in 96 years.
So you're an aviation safety analyst.
Correct. There's several projects I work on for the Airman Testing Standards branch out of Oklahoma City, but I do review on questions and answers that come into our website. Anywhere throughout the world, they have our website and they can send us questions, and I am responsible for finding the answer and sending it back to them. So whether I have to bring in other experts, subject matter experts in our division to help me answer that question, then that's certainly what I do. I also do questions for the flight instructor, which we just completed the ground instructor questions. We put together a STEM and then 3 distractors. And one of those distractors is, of course, the real choice that they will answer when they take a test. And that can be any test, my goodness, any test that we're offering. So I write questions and answers for the Flight Instructor Airman Examination Board. Is what that's for. And that's just 2 of the projects I work on. 2 other projects I work on, we analyze the reason why the question is turning out the way it is. We're analyzing it and psychologically giving measures to it on why the question may either be too difficult, may not be challenging enough, or whatever it may be. We're studying up on it as well to make it more psychologically inclined to our testers. So, yeah, I'm staying busy as a guide dog leading a blind man, if you will. And, of course, I've had 3 guide dogs now. Also, I completed my degree at Embry-Riddle, and then that opened the door up for me to become interested in going to work for the Federal Aviation Administration. So I received 4 scholarships from the Air Traffic Control Association in Washington, D.C. And then I began, my first day was March 1st, 2010.
Did you have an incredible support system? Because
yes, ma'am.
This kind of thing can ruin your life.
It did, but the people around me was placed in my life through God, and He provided the right people in my life at the right time to help me overcome that obstacle I was currently facing at that time, and I progressed around, made the best that I could, and with everybody's help around me, and we have just jumped leaps. I mean, we have just made complete success out of my unfortunate circumstance. But here I am, living life to the fullest. Introduce anyone that hasn't heard of it or that needs to see a little bit of what a blind person can face, or how the challenges that a disabled person, and when I say disabled, I don't think of myself as being disabled or handicapped. I think of myself as being differently abled, because I'm blind in one eye and can't see out of the other, but my guide dog is my eyes, and I trust him to help me, take me wherever I need to go. And of course, my sighted wife as well, she helps me tremendously. So we're continuing to prosper.
You sure are. Thank you so much. I interviewed Quentin Super 4 years ago for his book about biking from St. Paul, Minnesota, up through Canada and back during winter break. It opened up opportunities he could have never imagined. He's been doing some ghostwriting, and now he's back with another adventure about the long road east.
From Minnesota to Portland, Maine, and over the course of 7 weeks.
2017, you did this.
Yeah, like my buddy and I, we got done with school. And our first thought was like, okay, well, there's only so much time and opportunity in life to do the things you want to do. And so, when else are you going to have 7 weeks to go and spend, biking across the country? And so we did that and didn't have a ton of money in our pockets, but we did have a ton of time. And so we set out not really knowing what was going to happen, but then it just all worked out.
Well, come on, there's got to be some inclement weather stories or near misses from the trucks rounding the corners in the Catskills. I mean, did you have any, you had to have some ups and downs. Am I right?
In Ohio somewhere, my bike tire got stuck in a railroad track, ended up flipping into the middle of the road. And unfortunately, I looked up and my face was about 3 inches away from the wheel of a semi. And so, that could have very easily been traumatic and deadly. But other than that, we lucked out. Like we didn't get hit. Obviously cars, they come close, but they never really do it. But this is what's crazy is 3 miles away from the whole trip being over, my buddy got ran into by a truck. Yeah, by a guy who was like a handicapped veteran driving this big Chevy Silverado and clipped him in the back wheel. And so 3 miles away, Alice, and we couldn't finish the job.
Oh, you're kidding. You were 3 miles from Portland?
Yeah. Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. It was crazy.
Is he okay?
Oh, of course. He was able, he kind of saw it coming, so he was able to whip his leg around and not get hit, but his back tire got absolutely obliterated. I personally ended up, going the last couple miles. My buddy, he had to go to a bike shop and then, long story, get a ride a couple miles away. But yeah, ended up finishing the trip, wrote a book, and the book itself isn't necessarily completely about the cycling. Unlike the first one, it's a little bit more about a coming of age story, like the relationship I had with my buddy Sam, who's on the trip with me. And I think people like that element as opposed to the first book, which is kind of all right, we're riding north into Canada and the wind and the weather and the snow is horrible. So it was a different take in that respect.
So what did you learn? Did you get closer to your friend? Did you find out something you didn't know?
Well, I learned that I'm kind of an idiot in many respects, but my intentions are always good. Not that necessarily is justification for my behavior, but no, it's always funny life, because I was 24 at the time, Alice, and so I was not necessarily on my best behavior. Definitely probably drinking too much, swiping too much on Tinder, that sort of thing. And that caused some disconnect between me and my friend for sure.
He thought you were obnoxious.
See, the funny thing is we're both obnoxious in many ways. At the end of the book, there's a line I say, because he had liked to drink as well. And so I said, you know what, if he was a guy who absolutely deplored drinking and I was a guy who was a Catholic or a Christian or, celibate, this trip wouldn't have been the same. But because of the characters we are, it just ended up being a good experience.
So now what? I think your books should be in every bike shop in America.
I try to make that happen. I try, they're in Barnes and Nobles here in Minnesota. My books are not politically correct, Alice, and not that they have politics in them per se, but again, there's a lot of debauchery and a lot of things that, you can't necessarily hand this kid off to your 15-year-old son or daughter and say, hey, here's how you can learn how to bike across the country. It's not really that type of story. And that's why some people like it, but it's also why a lot of people definitely hate it. So there's that.
Okay. We'll make a note of that. Thanks a lot, Quentin. A teacher and school psychologist, Nadine A. Block, founded a nonprofit to end corporal punishment in Cleveland, Ohio, and wrote a couple of books on that. Now that she's retired, she's painting, writing, and remembering Rosie, Memories of a Wisconsin Farm Girl.
Back in the days without electricity and indoor plumbing, cell phones, TV, we look back on those days with nostalgia about things being less complicated. As something we wish we had now. However, I didn't write my book under just that. I wanted it to be an authentic story about growing up with not just the joys of farm life, but the sad and dangerous aspects of it for children, especially. children operated dangerous equipment and like tractors and corn choppers. And a neighbor died when a tractor turned over and fell on them. And another neighbor's family found body parts in the corn silage after the farmer reached into the corn chopper for a stuck corn stalk. I learned to drive the tractor when I was 8 years old. I couldn't reach the brake, but my dad taught me to shut off the engine with a key, which wasn't an altogether sure way of stopping the tractor, but it did eventually. But, I think the bigger story that really gave me a perspective on farming and that I was never going to do that or be a farmer's wife was my story about Rosie. Rosie was a cow who was born about the same time I was. I was 10 years old, and Rosie was a Guernsey cow, and she looked like Elsie the Borden's cow with the long eyelashes, and she was just so peaceful, and she walked into the barn leading the cows, and she was my pet. And one day, my dad said to me that she was going to be picked up, and I knew what he meant. She was going to the glue farm or to the hamburger factory. The glue farm was where they made cows' hooves into glue. So they dragged her out of the barn and up the ramp of the truck that would take her. And I'm standing there watching, and she's like panicking, and her tongue is dripping saliva, and she's jerking her head up and down on the rope. And she's saying to me, "Save me." And I'm 10 years old, and I can't save her. I can't save her. And they pull her into the truck, and they shut the door, and the driver was on the driveway. And I ran in my bedroom and crawled under the bed and cried. And my dad came in and said to me, "Come on out, and there's a new calf in the barn. You're going to just love it." And I thought, there is no one who will replace Rosie. Don't you understand that? And at that moment, I realized that I would never be a farmer or a farmer's wife. And it also brought attention to some of the other short and cruel lives of animals on a farm. So it wasn't all idyllic, the jumping in the haymow, the picking pollywogs out of this creek, the going to the little country one-room school that my father and grandmother had gone to, the feelings of being a farm child, that proud that everything that you ate came from your barn or your fields, and that you were responsible. You were a part of that company, basically, that got this done. You were an important person. What a great way to grow up for a child, feeling that they're contributing. But the aspects of farming, the idea that these animals were your pets one day and on the table the next, it was hard for me to accept.
I can certainly understand that, Nadine, but what a great story. Thank you. Mr. Bill writes books like it's his job over the last 35 years in retirement in Tennessee. He's published 4 through Page, and we welcome him back to the Page Publishing Book Club to talk about his latest, Maya Dan.
Maya Dan is the first of 3 books I'm writing, a series of 3. The second one I've written already is Anasazi, and I'm writing the third one now called Zuni. It's a series of generation to generation to generation in those 3 books. And I was studying certain things about the Yucatan Peninsula, where the Maya Dan people live, or the Mayan people live. And this is a story that sprang from that. A boy and his family that were farmers on land in the Yucatan. And they went to the beach one day, and they heard a big boom, and they became frightened, and they started home. And, of course, the big boom was an asteroid that hit out in the ocean, and it sent a tidal wave, or tsunami inland. And they tried to get away from it, but their mother and father were drowned, but the kids survived. and they traveled up to another land. It's a story about family staying together no matter what trouble they had. They headed west and north, and through their journey, they ran into many difficulties. They ran out of food, and so they had to eat what I call the crawling monsters, which were snakes, to survive. And they met other people, joined up, and in one place, they found a boat and had to travel down the river. There was still a river. But during that trip, they had to survive the weather, food, and gangsters, we would call them today. And they finally made it after months. They ended up where there were people that had survived, and they all joined together. They started their crops again, and they were able to live, and they lived a good life. And that particular time, Mayadan had grown up. Then he had a family of his own, and he met a girl named Snowfall. And later on, Snowfall got raped and cut and hurt, and he took revenge out, but he did not kill anyone. He had 2 daughters, and his daughters saved him from killing someone. They let the council do it. They had a city, and they could go in and meet the other people and sell their goods and buy goods and survive that way. After this book, you find out that one of his family married a guy, and they started a family. It's exciting to see what they did, where they are, and what they're doing.
All right, Mr. Bill, I'm looking forward to it. A mom of 4 and a real estate broker, Kendra Kuhnhofer, was lucky to have her grandparents living in her guest house. It inspired her to write 3 books in 1 year about Papa and Blue. This one is entitled Papa and Blue on the Farm.
My grandfather, who we call Papa, is an old-time farmer and a Marine. And so my kids, grew up with Papa and Nana and getting all of these experiences, from either a farm or, something that means something like a firm handshake, or you look somebody in the eye. And so I wrote these books about Papa, and he had this dog named Blue. And this dog went everywhere with him. He would ride in the car with him. He would ride around the property. He was by his side all the time. So I wrote these books inspired by my grandparents. Papa and Blue on the Farm is out now. It's raining, and then the last one is at the beach where we used to take family vacations. It's all done in poetry, and it is a children's book about Papa and Blue kind of doing things through the day. And then there's always a recipe in the back that's one of Nana's recipes that we grew up with. So the back of the book reads, "An adventure awaits. It's such a surprise. A pup named Blue. Papa is there too. A special farm to see. Count the animals, 1, 2, 3. A recipe to make. Maybe something sweet to bake. Blue is such a good pup. An adventure awaits. Go ahead, open me up." This first one on the farm is just going through the day, what you have for breakfast. There's a couple things that need to be fixed. You can see all the animals. There is a garden. Be careful, because as you're smelling flowers, you could get pricked by some roses. You have some pigs. And then Papa realizes that the chores aren't that bad, because he does have his dog Blue next to him. And, they get back home, and Nana has baked a treat, and they're warm by the fire, and that's his day. It's funny, when the book came out, I had people that I didn't know that were, friends of friends or friends of my children that have had young children that were buying the book and just loving it, sending me pictures of their child reading the book, which was great. Barnes & Noble has reached out to me, my local Barnes & Noble, and of course my church. I've taken a few books to Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. But what's really fun about this is my grandfather, Papa, passed away a few years back, so he did not get to see the done book. But so interesting is I got the books delivered to my house. The first time I saw them was on his birthday. And then the first time that it showed up in Amazon and Target and Barnes & Noble and such was on my birthday a couple weeks later. So it's just really special. The book is special to my heart and to the kids and to my family. So it's a cute book, and there's, as I said, another 2 coming. So I'm excited.
Oh, you should be, Kendra. Good job. Marion Marston is working on her PhD in education, but to get there, she had to take a creative writing class to finish her undergrad, and that's where she got the inspiration for her book, Blue.
So I went to class, and I'm sitting in this class, and I'm like, this is so boring.
Why?
Um, because when you say creative writing, you think you're gonna get to write little stories, and you're gonna, come up with different plots and stuff. And I'm like, this is poetry. This is a poetry class. I'm like, oh my God. So as I went along through the semester, I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I really like this. And that's where it started. And I just kept going and going. Even after I graduated, I still kept writing. It covers everything. It covers life situations. It covers love. It covers pain. It covers laughter, family, everything you can think of. Social issues, everything.
Do you have a favorite one you want to share with me? A short one?
There's a couple of them that's a big hit, but my favorite one was something that I wrote is, it was like really close to my family. Because when I look at my family, I see whole bunch of different, how you see difference in your family. Like, okay, the name of this one is called How Black is Black. Okay, and this is how it goes. I was born to a single Black mother on her 17th year with cocoa brown skin and jet black hair. She was orphaned at the age of 11. She was always looking for someone to love. My hair is red, my skin is light, with no father in sight. You are not Black, they say. Always looking for someone to love. My brother came 2 years later. His skin was brown, his hair is black, no father in sight. He has to be Black. Still looking for someone to love. My second brother came 2 years after the first. His skin was a caramel tan, his hair was red. He's not Black, they say. My son was born on my 20th year. His skin was white, his hair was light brown, his eyes were blue. His father, look at him. He's not Black, so he can't be mine. He too grew up without a father. How Black is Black? I mean, there's so many, no matter what color you are, there's so many varieties in the way you can look. And people don't accept you for who you are or say, oh, you're different because you don't look like them. That's what that meant to me.
Oh, nice message, Marion. Thanks. Latoya thought she had it all. Great husband, happy life, and then one day realized she was living a lie. Predestined. Right is not wrong. Wrong is not right. Second edition details her struggle, her awakening, and her faith.
It was kind of like things that were done in a deceptive manner. I was living a life in which I didn't see that anything was going on wrong, in which later on I found out that there was a lot going on that I just wasn't privy to. So I was basically living the life of a lie and I was not made aware of it.
So your husband was cheating on you and you didn't know it?
Correct. I mean that, a child came out of it. I wasn't made aware until I was, told about it. And now this child is like 12 or 13. So obviously, yeah, I mean, it was just the life of a lie, but I wasn't made aware of it.
So did you turn to God to get out of this?
Well, I had turned to God prior, to this. I learned about it. My now ex, he was the one who he walked away. Information, I found out a lot of, information afterward. I would say throughout my whole entire life brought me, closer to God. This, relationship just had me to dive even more deeper in to, just who God is in my life and how he has brought me through all of the challenges, that I have gone through with that particular situation. So I just want others, I want others to, to know that it's okay, to speak about it, because some people don't speak about it. Some people, they don't want to talk about it because it is divorce, and the word, the God doesn't like, divorce, but he also says that he wants people, we are to be put together by him, not ourselves.
When you say predestined, right is not wrong, wrong is not right. What do you mean by that?
Well, in the word, it talks about how, people do things in life, that they say and deem to be right when the word of God speaks against it. So my first book was right is not wrong and wrong is not right. And so I wanted to incorporate it into my second book as well, because I want the message to really resonate into people that, don't live a lie, don't, live a life of doing things that you consider to be right when they are wrong, and you're making a lifestyle of it.
But so many people do, LaToya. So many people do. Listen, thank you so much for sharing. And that's it for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thank you to all the authors who joined us. And if you want to find out more about them and their books, check out pagepublishing.com or go to any one of a number of major retailers, including Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, BAM, Books A Million, Apple iTunes, Google Play. There's too many to list. Listen, if you think it's time to share your story, come on. What are you waiting for? Go to pagepublishing.com. Find out how we can help you bring your book to life. Or just, call 888-778-1832 and get all of your questions answered. 888-778-1832. That doesn't cost you a thing. And you know what else is free? You can download all of our Page Publishing Book Club shows at 710WOR.com. Thanks for joining us. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. I'll catch you next time.